start the record. No. So we're starting the recording for Debbie and Terry. So hi Debbie and Terry. We're here with Richard and Juliet. There's nobody else on the Zoom, so I feel weird, but that's okay. So the Jewish Messiah. First of all, the ancient view is pretty basic. There's not a lot of writing on it, and what there is just that like someone will continue or reestablish the Davidic monarchy. So Moshiach, Messiah, literally just means anointed one, which is what all of the kings of Israel were. They were all anointed. That was part of the coronation process. So the anointed one is simply the one that returns and is anointed to be king of Israel. There was not originally any like deified element to it. Other than, I guess, the fact that like theoretically all of the kings of Israel were selected by God, right? So whatever,
that's all kings everywhere.
Right.
Supposed to be chosen,
right. But this idea that the Messiah is sort of God, or like is a messenger of God, or is the herald of the end of days and things like that, that is a later introduction into the concept of Mashiach.
For us?
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of, I mean, later is still 2,000 years ago, but in terms of like the scope of Jewish thought, right? Like in biblical times, that's not what was meant. Even in the early rabbinic era and the some of the early Middle Ages, it's vague. Like the Maimonides, 12th century, so like not super early anymore, right? Even he says that the Isaiah prophecy of that a messenger will come and cause peace on earth and the lion will lie down with the lamb and all of that, that's metaphor, just meaning that Jews will have their kingdom reestablished. They will be normal people in the world, and this like global anti-Jewish violence will cease. Which I know sounds like, okay, well, that sounds pretty magical, but to him it felt totally feasible. It wasn't about like an end of days kind of thing. It was just like this is what it means when the Messiah comes, is that like the Jews get to have their own kingdom and their own autonomy and be safe in the world. However, it is also clear that there were other sages and teachers and philosophers in that time and earlier, especially those who had a lot of direct contact with Christianity, that some of those sort of Christian ideas of Messiah seeped into what the Jewish Messiah would be. So even though we rejected the idea that Jesus was the Messiah, the concept of our Messiah will come and bring the end of days and establish an actual peace on earth and all of that kind of stuff, that starts to seep in the like 9th century-ish. So then we get like what we know now about the Messiah, like the pretty normative view, I would say. The like if you asked the average Jewish teacher, like a learned Jew, but like the most observant Jews or whatever, would say, yes, the Messiah will first. Elijah will come, right, and check that we are ready for the Messiah. That's why we open the door on Passover and all of that, is that we're showing, we're welcoming, we're ready for the Messiah. So Elijah will come first, judge us, and then if he judges us ready, he will let us know the Messiah is coming. The Messiah will come there will be the resurrection and the judgment and all of that.
In my religion.
In our religion, yes, this is the Jewish belief, is that when the Messiah comes, there will be resurrection, which again is depends on who you ask. Is it a bodily resurrection or a spiritual resurrection? What happens if you are a Kabbalist and you believe in reincarnation? Which body is being resurrected? Um, so there's a lot of moving parts. There's no, like everything in Judaism, there's no easy, straightforward answer, but some kind of everybody existing on one realm again happens. Um, and then the judgment day and the, whatever, the purification of the souls that still need to be punished, the elevation of the souls of the righteous, whatever is happening there. Again, big, depends on who you ask. But for the most part, still there's like, in Judaism, there's still no eternal damnation. So even that judgment period is not, it's not like a revelation, like oh, what is the Left Behind movies about? What do they call that? When some people are
Oh,
like lifted out of up and some people are left behind.
it's trans something or other.
Okay, well, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So that concept doesn't exist in Judaism, where the righteous go to one place and the not righteous go to another place completely. It's not quite like that, but there is some kind of like judgment, purification thing that has to happen. That's, for the people who are not ready to be fully in the messianic age, where my understanding, and I could be wrong about the timeline here, because it's all in a time where time doesn't exist anymore. But I think that's when the righteous go and feast on the Leviathan, while the wicked are being purified, and then is the eternal peace when the lion lies down with the lamb, etc.
But this talks about the whole world, and Judaism's just for Jews.
That's okay. So the mitzvot are just for Jews. Judaism is just for Jews in that sense. However, the Jewish view of the Messiah, I would say, like the traditional view, is that there still is only one God in heaven and earth, right? So it's not like we have our God and you can have yours. It's like it's all one God and we have our understanding of God and you have yours, and that's fine, but it's still the same God. So when Judgment Day comes and God's kingdom rules on earth or whatever, that applies to everyone. However, how people are judged is different, right? Because non-Jews are not expected to keep the mitzvot. So if they haven't kept the mitzvot, they're not punished for that. If they are righteous by their own set of laws, then they still get to go eat the Leviathan. If they are wicked, even by their own set of laws, which, to be fair, is not actually about their own set of laws, I should say. It's about the Noahide laws, right? Like if they have not murdered, or yeah. If they have been basically good people, they get to go eat the Leviathan. And if they have not been basically good people, they still have to be purified. But in the end, everybody is resurrected, or is whatever, is in the same realm of existence together. Every soul that has ever lived on earth is together. Regardless of what religion you were when you were alive. Which is, I mean, so on the one hand, there's like, okay, so if you don't believe in reincarnation, that's a lot of souls, right? How many people have ever lived in all of human history? It's a lot of souls to have to like cohabitate on Earth, even if it is not physically Earth and it's not a bodily resurrection. Just like imagine how many souls are like bumping up against each other in that spiritual realm. Still feels like a lot. But if you do believe in reincarnation, then again, like what body are you inhabiting? Does it matter like if it's not a bodily resurrection and it's just your soul, but you still are like Are you trying to reunite with other souls, which like doesn't matter which um which life was most recent and what other souls you encountered throughout your various lives? I don't know. There's a lot of like open-ended questions there. That and it's one of those things, much like life after death, where the rabbis were kind of like, so like, how would we know? So I do feel like that they talk a little bit more um dogmatic is still not a good word because nothing in Judaism is really dogmatic, but they do have a little bit more of a firm idea um about the messianic age than they do about the immediate life after death. Um but it's still not, there's still a lot of unanswered questions left that various rabbis have given various answers and some have said, "Ugh." And it's like not very clear.
Smacks of being a fairy tale to calm people who are grieving.
Yes, right, that you will see them again.
Yeah.
um yeah, that's possible, that's where it originated. My sense is, and this is like purely my own analysis based on what I do know. And so, again, like the next two sessions are going to be taught by someone who has a little bit more specific learning in this area of Judaism, this like historical analysis of the development of Jewish views of the Messiah. But the way I see how it has developed historically, where how it started in the biblical era as like simply a king, to what we're waiting for now with this like spiritual resurrection and whatever. I think two major things. Well, I think the major thing that happened is Christianity, but there are two ways in which that strongly influenced this shift in Jewish views on the Messiah. So one is simply like acculturation, right? That like in Christian society, this was the view of the Messiah. And so even though we were like, well, your Messiah is wrong, maybe your expectation of what will happen when your Messiah returns is similar to what we think the one coming of the real Messiah will be. Because that's part of it too, is this whole idea of a second coming does not exist anywhere in Judaism. So that's one of the big issues that Judaism has with the idea that Jesus is the Messiah, is that like this idea developed that when the Messiah comes, all of these like peace on earth things will happen. It didn't happen when Jesus came, therefore Jesus is not the Messiah. However, before Jesus existed, that concept of the Messiah didn't even exist yet. So like how that developed is interesting.
Well, you said Elijah,
Yes, Elijah.
and Elijah's been with us for
Yes,
centuries.
forever. Elijah's interesting because so in the Bible, Elijah doesn't die. Elijah gets carried up
Right.
in the chariot. So we don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
So then in the Talmud, the rabbis are constantly talking to Elijah. Elijah is seen as this person, this like very unique character who has access to both realms, the earthly and the heavenly, simply because he was a human who did not die. Possibly Enoch, but because the Torah also says Enoch walked with God and then God took him, and it's very vague about what happened. So there's a lot of midrash, and then of course the book of Enoch is apocryphal, but discusses also that Enoch is the Metatron, right? Is like the voice of God. But that for whatever reason didn't like take a strong hold in like normative rabbinic Judaism the way Elijah did. So Elijah sticks with us. Elijah's been with us since the beginning, and that role of Elijah being an intermediary between the earthly and the heavenly has existed forever. But the idea that the Messiah is a heavenly creature or heavenly being, person, whatever, that Elijah like comes ahead of to prepare us for, that's slightly later because because that's not who the Messiah was initially. That's not what we were expecting of the Messiah. So this idea that Elijah would need to come first only establishes after this idea that the Messiah is a heavenly being.
So we didn't always believe Elijah would pre-tell the
No.
coming?
No, we always believed Elijah to be an intermediary. Like in the Talmud, which some of the Talmud is written pre-Christianity, even though it's all written post the life of Jesus, but in terms of like the establishment of the church, some of the Talmud is written pre-Christian, some of it's written post-Christianity, but it's, you know, our more established Talmud is the Babylonian, not the Israel. So they did not really live among Christians. So they don't have that influence yet of the Messiah. And so their relationship with Elijah is like he comes and like answers questions when the rabbis are having an argument and they can't come to an agreement, which is all of the Talmud. But sometimes it'll be like, then Rabbi so and so claims, well, I was walking along and Elijah came to me and told me that I was right. And then the other rabbis are like, well, you can't argue with that. But Elijah said so. So they have Elijah like that. But this concept of Elijah being like foretelling the coming of the Messiah, it's not clear to me that that existed for the rabbis of the Talmud. But as I said,
But how would he be if what you're saying is so?
Yeah.
You had said that he determines whether or not we're ready.
Yes.
What comes when he's ready? If we're ready, what will we see?
Okay. So this is
It'll
what
be like that story she tells every Rosh Hashanah about the finger in the book thing.
Oh, yeah.
Or
the like a bodiless hand writing your name in one book or another, or like it's posed over one book and you have these 10 days to decide which if you can move it.
You ever heard her tell the story on Rosh Hashanah about this is totally real and you were completely unprepared? Or something like that.
Yeah, that's the book. Do I have? Yeah. It's from this book. This is totally real. This is real and you are completely unprepared by Alan Liu. So it opens, each chapter opens with some of these like meditations, these like italic, very mystical. So yeah, the one for Rosh Hashanah is like, you enter the room. There are two books open ahead of you. A pen is poised. Which book will your name be written in? But there's no person holding the pen, and it's very like, ooh.
The first time you did it, I was like, just cool. The second time, I'm like, are we gonna hear this a lot?
Maybe.
I kind of like it.
I like this book a lot.
Really?
Yeah. It's a journey from Tisha B'Av to Simchat Torah. So it's only about
holidays.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's only those holidays. The fall. I think every Jew should read this book. Alan Lewis. I'm getting totally off topic now, I apologize, but just since you brought it up, Alan Liu was like revolutionary in getting the sort of like Eastern religion baby boomers back into Judaism. You know. Anyway, in California especially. Okay, anyway, so here's what I was saying though about how Christianity influenced the view of the Jewish Messiah. So one is that their ideas about the Messiah and their explanations for why Jesus was the Messiah, even though that didn't necessarily jive with our biblical idea of the Messiah, I think it started to influence. So this idea that like, okay, the Messiah as this like heavenly creature or heavenly person, creature feels dehumanizing, but whatever, you know what I mean? This like divine being starts to seep in. And then also because of the extreme violence that a lot of the Christian world imposed on Jews, this idea that this like messenger from God would come and establish very real peace on earth when we would be proven correct, and like everything would be happy and the righteous would be celebrated and all of this, I think came to have a very deep like religious uh like soothing mechanism. So that's when you say like it smacks of like a fairy tale to help people who are grieving, I think in a very like big picture sense that is what happened, not necessarily just the direct like when you die you're reunited with the people who have gone before you, that whatever, like maybe there's some of that, but I think the bigger issue was like we're being murdered constantly for our beliefs. Wouldn't it be nice if God came to earth and said, actually, the Jews were kind of right, and here's the like establishment of the one true God and God's kingdom on earth. I think like that's kind of what was happening. And not to say when I say like that's like pushback against Christianity. Of course, I know that there were other instances of violence against Jews that wasn't just perpetrated by Christians, but on the whole, globally, it has mostly been Christians throughout the last 2,000 years. So I think like those two things together really are what propels the current view of the Messiah, which is this idea that like when the Messiah comes, the bodily resurrection will happen, or the resurrection will happen, bodily or not, is still up for debate. But there was a time when it was not up for debate. In Maimonides' time, he came under a lot of fire for saying that the resurrection was not bodily, and he was almost excommunicated. And then I think maybe Nachmanides, some other rabbi of his time, defended him, and then like explained what he really meant was like, first there is a bodily resurrection, like after Elijah comes or whatever, there's the bodily resurrection and the judgment period, and then the real messianic age comes, and that is a purely spiritual realm or something. So that was his like way of dealing with, I think how I read that is that Maimonides did not believe in a bodily resurrection, but then he got in a lot of trouble for saying that. And he was like, oh, no, maybe like there it is first, but then like if we're talking about a messianic age when every soul who has ever lived returns to earth, we can't possibly believe that every body who's ever lived lives together on the physical plane of earth that we have now. That like wouldn't, there's no way. So um that's the general sense. The Death of Death, I have over there, by Neil Gaiman. He wait, is it the right name? Yeah, Neil Gaiman. It's a little bit about life after death, like in the immediate sense, but it is mostly about the messianic age and this idea that a time will come when, as I said, there is no time, there is no death, and that's the idea of the messianic age. I think that has the strongest hold, is that basically it's a reestablishment of the Garden of Eden, except that instead of just Adam and Eve getting to live in it, we all get to live in it. So that it's like eternal, timeless, painless, we just all live in harmony, and vegetarians. Yes. So the Garden of Eden was a vegetarian time.
Good. Animals.
Yes, there were animals. Sorry.
And God gave Adam control over them.
No, but God says, I give you all of the plants of the garden for you to eat.
Okay.
And the
Got-
animals can't eat them?
They can eat the
I think
vegetables.
I don't know if the animals in the Garden of Eden eat other animals. That
Well,
might
he's
not be
not
addressed.
told everything to reproduce.
Yeah.
Well, some things require being eaten because of the rate at which they reproduce. Some animals were designed by God to be prey for other animals because we do not need them creating thousands of offspring or even hundreds of offspring every single year.
Those are called mosquitoes.
It could
I
be
choose to
flies,
believe
it
that
could
there
be
were no
rats, it could
mosquitoes in the
be
Garden of
bunnies.
Eden.
No mosquito?
That's
You
my
just believe whatever you want, don't you?
You're
Okay.
creating your own Garden of Eden.
Say what?
You're creating your own garden.
I am creating. Well, it's pretty vague. The Garden of Eden. The first creation story doesn't say a lot about specifics. It does say the creepy crawlies, the things that swarm on the earth, which does mean bugs. But which bugs? It doesn't specify. Maybe there were no mosquitoes.
You think mosquitoes
Each of every
evolved later?
two of
Yes.
everything
They
was
were-
created on Noah's Ark.
Or
Therefore,
Yeah, but Noah's Ark comes way later.
the two of every living thing was brought on the ark. Subsequently, 40 days later, all those things came out.
Right.
except the unicorn.
Except
Except
the
for what?
unicorn.
The unicorn didn't get on the ark.
Well, that's because he was playing in the rain.
Yeah.
And the dinosaurs didn't get on the ark.
Actually, I think they did.
They're called chickens, Juliet.
Because we don't know that they weren't there. So it's just shaped differently.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Um,
only the unicorns are the only thing that there's documentation
Documentation.
that they didn't make. That they didn't make it. And that was discovered by the Irish.
Right. No, that poem is first written by Shel Silverstein. The Irish only set it to music.
Was it?
Yeah. So
So it was a
still
Jew.
Jews. Yeah.
So then it is true.
Yeah, exactly.
If a Jew said it, it's true.
Exactly.
I was at a scrapbooking retreat.
Uh-huh.
And one of the ladies, we're just quietly doing our craft. I think she's going to get something out of me. She goes, "So, Juliet, what do you believe about heaven and hell?" And I looked her in the eye and I said, Jews consider that a childish question because we live for this earth. And anybody who is being good because they're going to get a reward later, is that really a good person? And she had nothing to say.
Well, I see you learned the same place I did. Because that's what I was taught.
Yes.
Ours is a faith that believes in
Yes.
living for the current and doing for what is best for the world. That's why there are more of us that get awards.
Yes. It's true.
It is.
Um,
It is. It's because we're taught to educate and to improve the world
yes.
where others seek a life after death.
Right.
Isn't that why Elon Musk hates that billionaire Jew? Because he's always starting these foundations to help the needy, and he goes, he's interfering with the world order and the natural progression of the race. Really, this is who you want to jump on, is this guy that's trying to help
the world. Everybody.
I mean, I don't know which billionaire Jew that is, but Elon Musk has been tweeting a lot of really anti-Semitic things lately, so doesn't surprise me.
And before I did too, so
Yeah.
Makes you want to stay off of Twitter, doesn't it?
It does. I scroll through and I see all these tweets about how terrible Twitter has become since Elon Musk bought it. And I'm like, this is so true. This website sucks. And I just keep scrolling and I'm like, it sucks. And it has totally gotten me addicted.
I don't do Twitter except every once in a while something BTS related is on Twitter. So I have to go and see what this one thing is. But I don't stay, I leave.
And I can honestly say I don't go to Twitter, or TikTok, or anything else. I'm strictly Facebook and emails.
Emails. In the world to come, in the Messianic age, there will be no social media.
Really?
I don't know. That's not a thing, but I just said that.
There'll be no
In the world to
communication.
come,
Well,
and
there
it
will
be
be.
created by AI.
Well, that's
God,
a
that's
fear that still currently exists.
The
Yes.
singularity is upon us.
Well, that's like, did you ever watch Black Mirror? That episode about like your consciousness can be uploaded. So when you die, you never die, basically. Like your body dies, but you live in like a utopia of your own creation.
I did not. I
don't
am
know
very
that.
selective jumping through Black Mirror. I only watch episodes. So
What is Black Mirror?
it is a dark science fiction.
Yeah.
Very dark. It
On
always goes
TV
in the
or-
bad.
On Netflix. It was a
Oh,
was
on
a
Netflix. That's why I don't think Netflix.
it was a British show first, and then Netflix bought it. So the first season or two is very good, and then the second season or two is
But your concept, by the way, of utilizing the mind
yeah.
is being currently utilized to move parts of the body for people.
Oh, well, that
For
seems
real.
good to me
For
though.
real.
To like help
People who can't,
paraplegics or whatever.
right, for real, or people who can't see. It is being utilized as in connection with the AI theory, is that for real, they are using the mind to send signals through the human body to move a leg.
Well, I like that. That seems to me like about
And
benefiting
it's
this world, right? That
right.
about like improving quality of life for people that otherwise would be at a disadvantage in
Right.
this world. So like that I like. The idea of like uploading your consciousness to live forever in a utopia of your own making. That to
You
me
have to have
feels
a
like
lot of
messing.
imagination.
You would, and you have to have, I feel like a lot of, I don't know, is hubris the right word? Like you have to be really willing to, I don't know, live with yourself forever.
Right, that's
I
what
don't
you're
know
doing.
that it just,
You
yeah,
are living with yourself.
yeah.
If
Isn't that
you're up,
what Vanilla Sky was about?
Yes, but in Vanilla Sky, wasn't it like unclear? Like he didn't know if he was, it wasn't his own making, right? That's the Tom Cruise movie, right?
Right.
Yeah. Was it? I don't know.
He was in a car accident, and
Right.
then after the accident, everything went right for him. He was having numerous problems, but he ended up the girlfriend that he lost came back to him, and
Right.
he
that's
became
messianic.
Yeah.
and
That's messianic. That's messianic. Where everything goes right for you.
so he was living his best life, and they said, okay, we have figured out how to heal your body. For your mind to go back to your body, you need to commit this act of suicide so that your mind will disengage from this world.
Right.
So this was his crisis of faith. Did he really believe he was in an imaginary world? That he needed to go back to the real world, or did he just want to stay there?
Now that ties well with messianic.
Yeah, it does. So I guess this brings me to like my main question. Well, there were two things that I wanted to make sure we opened up space for today. One is if you have other specific questions about the Messianic age and things that you've heard that you wanted more clarification about that I could either answer or at least prep the expert to make sure she answers in the next two sessions. And then the other thing is like what does your Messianic age look like? Because in the Reformed tradition, we don't believe in bodily resurrection. We don't believe in necessarily like a Messiah, a person coming. We believe, I shouldn't say we believe, because also the Reformed tradition is that you can believe whatever you want. But the main teaching of Reformed Judaism on the Messianic vision is that's what we are creating when we do tikkun olam, that when we make the world a better place, we are moving toward our own Messianic age, and that, you know, God willing, someday we will create a world where there is peace on earth and justice and environmental stability and all of those things. So it offers like
Hope.
hope and a vision of like what that will look like in a way that our brains could actually conceive of, right? Because it's about the earth that we live on just being better, as opposed to some of these more mystical or like ancient rabbinic teachings that are like, I don't understand how could everybody on earth that's ever lived live on earth again. That's too many people. That hurts my brain to think about. So like, yeah, so that's it's more grounded, I think. So what would your vision be of the Messianic age?
I would go your route.
Okay.
I always thought that the Messiah, if that is a real thing, would be not a mystical divine being, but a charismatic human who would be like the polar opposite of Donald Trump, that he would lead people with love and kindness, and people would go, yes, we need to change and be nicer and not change
Right.
to be worse. But and like you said, bring an end to this ridiculous anti-Semitism and bigotry in general, and encourage the world in a direction of loving acceptance.
Right.
Well, it would follow in your pattern from what you've said that all this would be somewhat logical. A prophet usually predicted the coming of a king
Mm-hmm.
or anointed the king.
Right.
Subsequently, with the idea that this king, whether it be David, Saul, or would do the right thing for, at least for the Jewish people,
Right.
because at that time that was all
Yeah.
we cared about.
Right.
And actually, the rest of the people we didn't really care about. But if that followed the principle, then this Elijah character
Yeah.
would preset the anointing of a king via they now use the name Jesus,
Right.
but a king who would set up a good system.
Right.
So it would still all follow in a logical pattern and still keep Elijah alive
Right.
in that way, that we're looking for someone to tell us, okay, I'm going to anoint, or I am going to bring into this earth someone who will guide you. And the question of whether or not you believe Elijah.
Right. Well, that's
And we'll
always
do
the
that,
issue, right? Like
but that's always been the story of the
right,
prophet.
right, that the people don't believe them. And Jeremiah, or I think it's Jeremiah, that the
Mhm.
kings and the priests hire false prophets specifically to say the things that they want
Right.
the people to believe.
Well,
And
that's
Jeremiah,
what,
yeah,
in theory, that's what your hero Trump does.
yeah, you're a hero.
Anti-Trump, anti-Trump.
I realize that. I'm saying that.
Do not even.
But same theory that quote unquote a false prophet.
Right. Yeah.
And those are going to exist, whether they be Trump or Musk or anyone else.
Musk wishes he was a prophet. Anyway, even false.
Huh?
I said Musk wishes he could be even a false prophet.
He predicts things and always fall.
We need to hear more from these rich people who have good things for the earth.
Yeah. Well,
There are more
think-
evil than there is good. That's why.
I think the Gates were good people.
yeah, well, I was gonna say, but that's part of, I think, being a good person is that they don't want the limelight. They don't want to flaunt their money. They just set up their foundations and they quietly give to philanthropy and then they like fade into the darkness. And I mean, even Soros we hear the most about because he's a anti-Semitic boogeyman. But how often do we ever actually hear from him about how he uses his money for progress, for good? Never. We don't hear from Soros. We don't hear from the Gates. Jeff Bezos's wife, who inherited ex-wife, inherited a ton of money, or what, not inherited, but whatever, got a ton of money in their divorce, donated all of it to charity. We don't hear from her. I don't even know her name. I probably should. That's probably sexist that I just know her as Jeff Bezos' ex-wife. But anyway, um, like I think that's part of like not being a narcissist. It's like all of these evil
Because you
millions.
have
Yeah.
to kind of be a narcissist to put yourself in a position to make all that money.
Well, yeah.
Uh,
That's
Yeah.
why when they, yeah, go ahead.
There are good people out there, and it's just that the bad ones get more credit.
Yes. Well, the bad ones tend to be, I mean, I think the bad ones tend to be more powerful because it takes a certain kind of narcissism or sociopathy to amass wealth, to gain a certain level of power. I mean, they did, I know like the psychopath test or the sociopath test has been kind of discredited as like not a real psychological evaluation, but there was somebody had developed a test to kind of like gauge people's natural empathy or whatever, and like every CEO in the country failed it. Like you had to be kind of a sociopath or psychopath to reach that level of success. Unless you were like a startup and therefore the CEO of your own company because the company is just you. Like I don't know if they
But you're still
but they
driven. The word you're looking
driven.
for is driven.
Well,
It's
so
not necessarily narcissistic, as it is driven.
But you have to believe you deserve more of the money than your workers. Take example Ben and Jerry, who are famous for treating their workers well. But the cost of that is they get less of the money. You have to be willing to say, I'm willing to have less of the money so that the people who are making my company run can have more of it.
But
right.
you're still driven.
Yes,
If you
driven.
stop being driven, you'll go nowhere.
So the
No matter
rabbis,
who you are.
the
Even a rabbi has to be driven
yes,
to have a motive to pull forward.
the
Now, are they narcissistic? Not
some
necessarily.
rabbis. The Talmud says that's still the evil inclination, that the Yetzer Hara is important in moderation because without it, we would not reproduce, we would not have, business success, and we would not, what's the third thing? I forget. But there are three things that they say like the world needs to run on, and we would not do those things if we didn't have some motivation of like self gratification.
We wouldn't
Yeah,
have
invention.
inventions if we weren't trying to improve our situation. That
So
we do need a certain amount of
Drive.
greed and desire and
I don't know if you'd say greed. Because
but you know what I mean.
greed implies that you hurt
excess.
others
Yeah,
to get, but drive is not necessarily to hurt others. Drive means you move forward.
right. But you
Now, if
just
others are in your way,
right. Right. Well, that's the thing is like, so you need some of that, but you also need humility
right?
and you need somebody like, you need loved ones that you care about more than you care about yourself to help keep you in check and remember what you are working for exactly. And yeah, and keep it in moderation. But in the messianic age, we won't need any of that because everything will just be copacetic.
That's not good.
It does sound really boring to me personally. But
If there's no drive, and everybody just is a dishcloth.
everybody's a
The whole
dishcloth.
thing in the Garden of Eden.
No, he had not a job.
That's true. He did have a
He
job,
had to maintain that garden, whether it was planting more flowers.
but it wasn't toiling, right? When they're kicked out of the garden, that's
That
when he
was
says
different.
like, now you will tend to the soil by the sweat of your brow. In the garden, it was easy.
That wasn't the part I was talking
Okay,
about.
sorry. What were you gonna
Okay.
say?
The thing that the temptation that the serpent offered was if you eat the fruit, then you'll be more like God because
Right.
you will understand these things that you
Right.
don't understand now.
which does happen.
So it wasn't that, hey, this was not an evil thing to want to be more like God.
Right.
It is
But-
if you're doing it contrary to the guy who told you not to do it.
Well, he said
That-
a lot of things, you know?
You know,
That
if
guy.
he, if
But-
he,
but-
if he told you
but
not to do it, or she, giving the benefit of the doubt. to
Sure.
that-
They.
They.
Well, I don't want to go that way, but they're either male or female.
No. If God says that in God's own image, God created both male and female. So how are they both in God's image if God is only one of them?
Oh, we've gone some weird directions here. But the point is, first of all, God knew what Adam was going to do.
Yes.
And
Yes.
secondly, that is inherent to what makes a human being is to want
Right.
more.
Right.
From the very beginning, Adam saying, I want more than just this. I want to be more like God.
Well, technically Eve
Mm.
said that.
Okay.
I think we all are tempted. I think God tempts all. And the trick is not to fall for the temptations.
But
They're
sometimes
presented in front of you. And the trick is not to do it. Are you satisfied with what you've got?
but okay, but then how do you reconcile that with your point about being driven?
You
Because
can still
sometimes you
be-
have to give in to your temptation. You have to go after what you want.
That's not a temptation. That's an objective. There is a
Mm.
difference. If you're given the choice,
When does the temptation become different than objective?
you want a candy bar. You have two ways you can get it. You can either earn it or you can steal it.
Hmm.
If you steal it, you're giving in to temptation. If you work to get that candy bar, you're driven to want the candy bar.
Okay.
If you want a bride, you can either expect her to come to you and say, I'm the greatest, narcissism, or you can work at being kind and winning her over, an objective versus taking something for granted or taking something that isn't yours to take.
Right.
There is a
Yes.
difference. There is a distinct difference.
Now
But
we're talking
those-
about relationships. And
No,
Well,
but-
no, I'm just saying
I-
as a general
But
thought.
here's my thing about how that relates back to the Garden of Eden, though, is in both of those cases, there's still a thing that you want and a way to get them. In the case of the fruit of the
Tree.
the of knowledge of good and evil, there's no way to get that knowledge except by eating that fruit.
God didn't want you to have that knowledge. Now, you want to blame God, that's a different story. We'll go that a different avenue.
I
But God
think he
never-
did, or he wouldn't have put the tree there to begin with.
No, he was tempting.
But
The
that
tree was
the
there all the
point.
time. And it had nothing to do whether the devil.
No, the tree was not there all the time because God put Adam in that garden specifically.
Right. And in that garden was a tree.
But why would God put Adam
Temptation.
in that tree or in that?
Why did he give him Eve, who was
For
supposed to
fun.
be his helper, and then turned out being
Commandment God gave us be fruitful and multiply. He wasn't going to do that single-handedly.
he's
true.
God, he can do anything.
But
Okay,
Adam
Adam.
can't do anything. He has to have a woman to be.
Well, they had
fruitful.
Lilith.
Lilith first, and
And
that didn't work
obviously
out.
didn't do that right, or she wouldn't have left.
Right.
Well, no, she was a little more demanding than he wanted. But that's a different story.
Is that the story we're going with?
That's what appears in the books.
The earliest written midrash is that suggests that specifically their argument was about who gets to be on top
Right.
physically.
I didn't know it was physical. But
Yes,
okay.
it's explicitly sexual.
I didn't know that, but I would still.
Your
doesn't-
point still stands.
Right. But anyway, we're getting away from the point of the.
The Messiah. So,
So if it was a perfect world and you do nothing,
okay.
is
But
that
if
not self-defeating?
If the world
for
returns
him
to-
know the difference between good and evil,
We're going back. Okay.
well,
because I think it's an important point. If there's no evil in the Garden of Eden, the only way he can know the difference is if he creates it. Because God's not going to throw evil at him in the Garden of Eden.
That is
So-
correct. That's well, there's
So
your Masonic.
absolutely, that
There's
is
your
the course of
going
action.
back to your thing. There's your Messianic world.
right,
The
there's no evil.
Garden of Eden was perfect.
Right.
There was no evil.
Right. So if that's the messianic world, right, that we return to the Garden of Eden, but your point is still that we still have to tend to the garden so that it's not completely boring.
Of course you have to.
Okay.
Or wherever you are,
Right.
you still
Well,
have
everything will be the garden then.
you still have to fix cars, even though there may not be monetary exchange.
Right.
You still have to make cars, even though there may not be monetary exchange.
So what I'm really hearing is that the messianic world is just a giant kibbutz.
Yes.
It's like Star Trek. There's
Yes.
replicators and everybody can have everything.
Yes. Star
And
Trek is very Jewish and very utopian in its
vision,
vision. Yeah.
because it doesn't always work that way in the episodes. So it's more of a visionary thing.
Yeah.
They want the idea.
Right.
And they're going out to help others. And sometimes they show up and the people look at them and say, "What world are you and why are you here? V, you're Messiah."
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the concern, right? Is that the Messiah will come and we'll be like, who are you? Well, I didn't ask for you.
Right.
And we will turn away.
Right. So that's why
Isn't that the part of the prime directive? They needed the people to be able to go to other planets so they would understand the concept of people from other planets coming to them.
Right.
That if they went earlier, they could become these interfering aliens that build
we're
pyramids.
knowledgeable. I don't want to see the evil in the thing. I want to see good. I tend to look for the good in things.
Well,
Mhm.
you love Star Trek, then I'm sure.
Enjoyed it. I saw the last, what was it? When the guy saved the world. What was his name? Picard.
Oh, this show?
Yeah, they did.
They did the Picard show,
They
the
did.
series.
Yeah, they did 4 seasons of
I didn't watch
Picard.
that one.
You don't watch the ones on Paramount Plus?
Well, not
Discovery,
unless you have,
Stranger World,
not unless you have that streaming program. It limits. It's like
It's
watching.
the only good thing on Paramount Plus, but you have to have Paramount Plus if you want to watch the new Star Trek.
No, you have to have Paramount Plus. You can have Young and Restless.
I feel like we just learned a lot about you, Richard.
That's why I bought it. My wife.
Oh, for your wife.
I have no.
Okay.
I know nothing other than to make small. I do not watch.
I don't.
But I watch Blacklist and other programs, but I don't watch that. That's where I found the small light.
Oh, right.
So, but originally we got Paramount Plus because my wife traveled and missed episodes. And so I had to join Paramount Plus so she could get her back.
Catch up again.
Okay.
In the messianic world, you will never miss episodes of your favorite TV show.
And everybody will have streaming.
Yes. And the writers won't have to worry about whether or not they're being paid because there will be no monetary. Yeah,
Right.
they'll just have what they need and they can just be artistic
That's
for its
true.
own sake.
Right. So we're back to the messianic world.
See, it just all keeps
We have
going
to get back
full
to it.
center. Yeah, full circle.
You like how I do that.
It's good. It's good. I like it.
I'm
So
well
we
trained.
seem to be in agreement that the Messiah and the Messianic era are
Two
not
different entities.
spiritual things. They're real world wishes for cocoon along and all that.
That's my feeling.
Well, of course yeah, but that's what all religions, getting back to your general, that's exactly what Christians think, that Jesus will enter. They're looking forward to his return for a messianic world. We're saying.
Right, but they
make
do
the-
believe that it's a spiritual
That he
thing.
will-
Yeah, they've got
Well,
the
what-
horsemen and all that.
Well, what they're saying is he'll come and not everybody's going to agree with him, so he's going to have an army of good guys. You gotta have some
The
imagination.
rapture, that's the word I was trying to think of
Oh,
earlier.
yeah.
When some people get raptured up and some people are left behind.
Left behind. Yeah, but
That's the term I was.
That word is too tightly interwoven with Blondie and her alien with the guitar, and
Oh, that Blondie.
not the Jagwood.
I was
I was wondering if it's until he said,
Debbie Harry.
yes,
And
Debbie
don't you
Harry. Okay, okay.
until she said guitar, and then I realized which
Yeah.
Blondie she was.
It's like, what does Dagwood and Blondie have to do with the rapture?
What was the name of our group?
Yes, that was the name.
Blondie is yes, is the name.
What's the name of the group?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, all right.
Tell your friends to sign off, and
Yeah, my friends that aren't there. Okay, we're gonna stop the recording.
if you're 12:30.